What's up, guys? So if you're trying to figure out how to get the lowest lease payment on a car that you or a loved one is thinking about getting, this is the only video you'll ever have to watch, I promise you that. In today's video, I'm gonna show you exactly step-by-step what to do to negotiate the lowest lease payment. And it's actually really straightforward once you understand the numbers you need to research in order to have the highest negotiating leverage when you visit these car dealerships. Now, I do want to preface that you will need to put your detective hat on, so make sure to put that on because getting the lowest lease payment will actually require a little bit of legwork from you in terms of research. But trust me, guys, just an hour of research plus referencing this video will equip you with so much knowledge that oftentimes you'll walk into a car dealership and you'll know more than the car salesman himself. Using today's method, I was able to save over $2,200 on a lease for my mom's latest VW sedan, and we actually ended up lowering her monthly payment around $55 per month from the original quote that they gave us. Now, speaking of today's method, it's essentially a video format of a popular Reddit post on the personal finance subreddit. So all credit goes to the writer of this post, Toma Tuvem. I think I said his name right, but it is because of this method I learned exactly what I'm going to share with you today. So I'll be sure to link to the Reddit post in the description below if you'd like to read it after this video. All right, guys, so let's get right into it. Number one, your first step is to assess the exact model, make, and the terms that you want, as well as how many miles a year you intend on driving it and how many years you want to lease the car for. Once you have these details, make sure you write them down and you remember them somewhere. Now, personally, I'm an SUV kind of guy. I love driving a car that's really high up, and I definitely value luxury over performance, but for today's video, I know some of the most popular cars out there are actually sedans. So today we'll go through an example using a 2022 Honda Civic Sedan Sport. All right, so after you've completed step one, step two is one of the biggest steps. It's to figure out the residual value of that car. The residual value is the value of the car that the manufacturer thinks the car will be worth at the end of the lease term. Now, all cars depreciate, and you may have heard that really popular saying, which is like, after you drive the car off the lot, the car is immediately worth a lot less due to depreciation. And that's definitely true because most cars have a depreciation curve that looks like this. After about 3 years, the typical lease term, cars are generally worth 55 to 65% of their original value. If we're able to figure out the residual value of the car we're trying to negotiate for, it serves as the basis for the rest of these steps. Now, in the case of a lease, a higher residual value is always going to be better. One important note is that the residual value is not something that is to be negotiated. Rather, it's usually set by the dealer, and your job is to figure out what it is because it will help you negotiate the sale price of the car. So how do you get the residual value? Well, there are a few methods that you can do to get the residual value of any make and model. Number one, you could go to the dealership and ask. They won't tell you easily. Technically, the information should be transparent if you're nice enough, but sometimes car dealers are a little bit guarded with their information. My favorite method is to actually go to Edmunds.com or CarGurus.com, and both of these websites are super helpful in figuring out the exact residual value of your make and model. Now, typically, these forums are contributed to by auto industry insiders, and the information is generally crowdsourced and reliable. So, let's say you want this 2022 Civic Sport sedan right here. It's nice and blue, and you want it for 36 months or 10,000 miles a year. The MSRP on this guy, $24,115. What I would then go do is actually Google 2022 Honda Civic Sedan Sport residual value. As you can see, it's the top result in my Google search bar because I was doing this a little bit earlier. But after you actually type that in, you want to find a thread that looks like this: 2022 Honda Civic lease deals and prices by forums.edmunds.com. It's basically a discussion on that specific year's make and model. Almost every single make and model has a thread of their own on the Edmunds.com forums, and the moderators there try to dispense the most accurate information. So in our case, if we do a little bit of scrolling on this thread specifically, we'll actually be able to find a post, which I have pulled up right here, where a user named MM7 is asking for the 36-month numbers on a 2022 Civic Sport, a 2022 Civic EX, and a 2022 Touring for his zip code. The moderator on July 3rd replies that for a 3610, which is 36 months or 10,000 miles a year, the money factor is 0.0015 MF. So the money factor, which is something we'll get into, that's what we actually need in step three. Just ignore that for now. But as you can see in the second line, he says the residual is 69%, 67%, or 65%. for these models respectively. So that's awesome. We figured out the residual value is 69% after 3 years, and this is 69% of the capitalization cost, which I'll also get into shortly. Step 3 is to figure out what the money factor is, but in our case, it was actually found by doing step 2. The money factor is the interest rate. It's always represented as the actual interest rate divided by 2400. So in our case, if the money factor is 0.0015, if we multiply that by 2400, we get 3.6%, and that's the interest rate of the finance charge of the lease payment. If you can't get it at Edmunds.com or CarGurus.com, sometimes the car dealerships will actually tell you what the money factor is, but don't expect it. Now, it's also important to note that this isn't really negotiable either. It's just the interest charge on your payment, and we're gonna plug in those numbers right now into our calculator. So step 4 is to plug in these numbers into a car lease payment calculator. Lucky for you guys, I have one on the screen right here, as well as I'm gonna share this spreadsheet with you guys in the description below so that you can do it on your own. So once you have those 3 variables, the residual value, the money factor, and the MSRP, you can start ballparking what a lease payment for this exact car will look like using the car lease payment calculator. So right now, I'm just gonna go ahead and fill in this information. The residual here is 0.69 because it's 69%. And the money factor was 0.0015. Now you'll see that the actual monthly lease payment is not calculated yet because there is one variable we're missing, which is the capitalization cost. This is the cost that you're going to negotiate with the dealer, and it's basically the cost of the car to you, and it's what the lease payment is based off of. Generally, you want to focus on this number in negotiations, and the lower the capitalization cost, the lower your lease payment is going to be. Now, if you were a sucker and you didn't watch this video and you went into a car dealer without knowing all of this stuff, they might just base your lease payment off of the MSRP of the car, and that means you would end up paying way more. With our method today, since you're negotiating the capitalization cost, it should always be less than the MSRP. The reason is that the MSRP is just a made-up number. The dealer is buying the car from the manufacturer for a price called invoice. The invoice price is basically what the dealer pays for it, because the dealer needs to make money too. For us unsuspecting car shoppers out there, they'll just lease cars at the MSRP, but just like anything, there's a margin to work with there, and our job is to figure out what the lowest capitalization cost the car dealer will work with to get the deal done. So essentially in this calculator, what I basically do is I play around with the cap cost. I make it 15% less than MSRP, so I just kind of go right here, I press equals, MSRP, and then I multiply it times 85% or 0.85, and that gets me $20,498 for my cap cost, which is 15% less than MSRP. After I do this, you can see that the rest of the calculator takes care of everything. I get what my depreciation payment is every single month and my finance charge payment is every single month, and that's the total monthly lease payment that I can expect from this car. Now, if you really are curious, the lease payment is actually calculated with this really long formula right here, but I'm not gonna bore you with that. As long as you use this lease calculator or any other lease calculator online, it'll basically do the same thing. So this capitalization cost is 15% less, but sometimes I also like to go a little bit lower and see what my monthly payment will be if it's 20% less. So let's say, we're taking C2, cell C2, which is the MSRP of a car, multiplied by 0.8, which is 20% off. The cap cost would be $19.292K. And as you can see, our monthly lease payment is going to be $215 a month. Now, if it's only 10% off, let's do the same thing here. Multiply it by 0.9. Then our lease payment is $242 a month. So I'm going to continue to do this. I might even try $20,000 and see what the monthly lease payment looks like. I might try $18,000, which is a hell of a lot lower, and I'll get a $201 monthly payment. And I'll basically play around with all these numbers. I know all my numbers intimately before I go on to step 5. Step 5 is to actually call dealers, and this is where you're gonna put your research into action. The goal of calling a dealer is to find a baseline that you can work off of, so you're gonna call multiple dealers or even go online to, say, the leasehacker.com forums and try to find comparable deals to what you are looking for. Now, when you're calling dealers, don't just call your closest dealer, call some that are further away, and you wanna say this exact phrase. Now, you can write this down or pause the video. And by the way, I just took this from Reddit, so full transparency there, but basically the phrase is, "Hello, dealer. I see that there's a 2022 Honda Civic on your lot with XYZ options. Based on my research, the residual is 69% and the money factor is 0.0015 for a 36-month, 10,000 mile a year lease. If you'd be willing to base a lease off of a $19,500 capitalization cost, I'm willing to come in and sign the papers today. This phrase will basically just show to the dealer that you mean business and you're knowledgeable about the capitalization costs and that you know your numbers intimately. Immediately, you're gonna be taken a lot more seriously. So whenever I'm doing this, my first call is usually to a dealer that's not in my area because it's not a very convenient dealership to get to, but my first call is always going to be around 15% or 20% less than MSRP to see how low that I can actually go. I generally don't expect to get the first dealer to agree to my number, but what I'm looking for here is their response. How serious are they taking my offer? Are they immediately offended? If my cap cost is actually way too low, they might actually reply with something like, "There's no way we can do that, goodbye." And that's good to know because now we can call the next dealer and raise the cap cost slightly and gauge their response and kind of narrow in on a baseline. You're operating in a game of imperfect information, but by setting a really low baseline and then gauging their reaction, you can kind of start to understand what a reasonable number for the car is going to be. Now that's my personal negotiation method and it's worked for me in the past. Now, some people might take offense that I do lowball, at least in the beginning, but you have to be okay with this, or if you really want, you can offer a little higher than 20% less than MSRP right off the bat. Now, a good resource that I mentioned earlier was that you can go to other forums like on leasehacker.com and click on share a deal and see what other people are getting for their deals. And guys, seriously, it's just rinse and repeat this method. Eventually, you'll start to figure out what capitalization costs the dealers are starting to get interested in, and that's when you can hone in on a successful deal. Now, real quick, let's talk about down payments and rebates. Now, when it comes to down payments, in 99% of cases, you want to put zero money down. Not only is it going to help you figure out your baseline of deals a lot easier, since most of the shared information online that you see is basically a zero money down deal, but putting money down is actually a risk. Car dealers will always ask you to put money down because it's one method that they can get your monthly payment to look a lot lower. They try to get you to focus on your monthly payment, and you can get the monthly payment down to whatever you really want if you put more money down. Instead, like I said today, focus on the sale price or the capitalization cost of the car. Another reason why I don't like putting any money down is that if you get your car stolen or you total your car, the money that you put into the down payment will be completely lost. If there's anything you remember from today's video, it's zero money down and focus on the capitalization cost of the car, not the monthly payment. Now, when it comes to rebates, you'll want to find a car that the manufacturer is discounting or offering a rebate on if you want the lowest lease payment possible. You can monitor online for cheap deals or call around to different dealers to see if they have any incentives for the models that you're looking for. In my experience, discounting of certain models is a month-to-month kind of thing, so if there aren't any lease deals for your model right now, consider checking them out again next month. Manufacturers are always running those sort of deals on different types of models in order to move inventory. All right, so what should you actually pay for at the dealership? You can get away with only paying the first month's payment, and you usually have to pay this up front. There are also going to be miscellaneous fees such as lease acquisition fees, bank fees, gap insurance, registration and title, and document fees. If you choose to pay these up front, that's totally up to you, but if the interest rate is low enough, you might be able to bundle these into your lease deal. Now, I do have some final thoughts. Number one, be nice and respectful to the sales floor people. They may not be very financially literate when it comes to these numbers, but the salesperson's job is to organize the customer's details for the sales manager, and it may not be their job to know the numbers intimately. Number two, it's really a good idea to lease if you want a new vehicle every few years. Now, some people will hate on leasing, but it's especially good if you have a business, you can write off the lease payments as well. Lastly, finance a car if you do drive a lot or if the vehicle that you want holds its value really well. All right, guys, that's it. I hope this video gets you the lowest possible payment on your lease. Now, if after you watch this video and you do the steps today, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you if you were able to get a great deal and if these tips helped you. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video if you enjoyed today's content. Lastly, thanks to all my Patreon supporters for being here. I appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you guys in the next video, which will be in a few days here. All right, peace.